This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is the show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, type in Old Dogs, spelled D-A-W-G-S, find our podcast and subscribe. Well, we have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about something that is new for me called ADUs. And it may be new to you too. So I am talking with Peter McKernan. And he has been a real estate investor since 2013. He's been a real estate agent since 2015 and a full-time firefighter since 2008. Yeah, you hear it right. He does all three of these things. It's amazing. But anyway, he invests in single-family homes in California, and he's still able to achieve cash flow and appreciation through the process of building ADUs, Accessory Dwelling Units, on the same lot. While Peter invests, he is also working with his residential and real estate team, helping homeowners and home buyers with their real estate service needs. Peter is able to accomplish all this through his team model, and all the while working full-time as a firefighter. Wow. Well, Peter, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Hey, Bill, thank you so much for having me on the show. This is exciting. I really appreciate it.
Well, it is my pleasure, and I had an opportunity of actually meeting you earlier. We just kind of connected like networkers do. You were in my neck of the woods here in Orange County, California, and we started talking. When I heard your story, I just said, gee whiz, you got to be on the show because this is a neat story, and it's just amazing what you're accomplishing all at the same time here, which is just pretty mind-boggling. But well, first off, before we jump into what ADUs are and a lot of the other things that you've been doing, maybe you could just give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up about an hour east where I live now. I live in Orange County, like yourself, and I grew up in a little town called Redlands, California. So and it'll come into play a little bit later in the conversation, but I spent 22 years of my life there, and then after I got accepted to Long Beach State, I moved down to Orange County, closer to school, and attended Long Beach State. However, prior to that, once I got out of high school, I went straight into studying to become a firefighter, and I did all the classes that I needed to as soon as I got out of high school, finished out everything that I needed to accomplish prior to getting hired. And it took me about 3.5 years. Then I got hired full time a while ago. I was actually 22 when I got hired full time. And in that mix, I ended up getting accepted to Long Beach State, moved down to Orange County, and continued on doing the firefighting and also going to school. And once I got out of school, I figured that, hey, I need to do at least something to preoccupy my time when I'm off duty, because ultimately we have a few days off in between our shifts as firefighters. And I picked up a couple of podcasts. Podcasts were pretty new back then, and I was going to buy a condo down in Orange County with a really good friend of mine and the first investor that I jumped into real estate with. And we ended up, instead of doing that, we were going to buy in Orange County. We knew that Orange County and all over the place was going to be a great deal. However, even though the price point that we were looking at, the cash flow wouldn't be as great because it had HOA fees and some other stuff. So we ended up changing our directions after listening to a little podcast called Bigger Pockets. I know probably a lot of your listeners have listened to Bigger Pockets, and I ended up with that real estate investor friend of mine going into the Redlands market and buying a rental there back in 2013. And that was honestly probably one of the best things that happened with myself and the trajectory on where I was going in real estate, because it gave me the confidence, for one, because it was, just by luck, I think, because economically it was a good time to buy. The market was just starting to sprout after that huge downturn that it had between 2008 and 2012. So the market was still really good to buy any type of deal. And we ended up buying that property. We rented it out, and we've had a tenant in there ever since, the same one. And we've been able to cash flow since day one without even really running the numbers. Like I said, that was something that really happened for a little bit of luck, but also it helped me a lot to get into real estate and be confident in going and buying other deals and being able to know those deals better and better each time I bought another deal. So, and then we bought another one and we continued on. So that was a little bit about me. Now I'm here in Orange County. I run a real estate team. We sell about 25 to 30 homes a year, and I have a full-time assistant along with a buyer's agent as well. So it helps me on those days that I'm busy at the fire station or days that maybe I'm with other clients. So it's been very good. I think just kind of the cornerstone of what you talked about, doing all these things at once, I've been able to slowly but surely master certain areas of those things that I'm doing. For instance, firefighting, real estate investing, and also being a real estate agent, and put those into, kind of a trifecta, if you will.
Interesting. Wow. First, I got to ask one question. You started as an investor and then you got your real estate license. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I actually used a couple of different agents on my first two purchases, and then I got my real estate license. And I had some not so good experiences. They weren't terrible, but not so good experiences. I know a lot of agents out there are really, really good at what they do. Just the two agents I was working with didn't really have a lot of background in investing. However, while I was going through the process, I still really enjoyed the background of the negotiation, going through escrow, and I was a little fascinated with that. And I was able to build upon being an investor, getting my license and building that knowledge into helping other clients. So I had bought my first property in 2013. I got my license in 2015. So there was a couple years there where I didn't have my license. However, I wanted to get that license to be able to one, to look at deals, get more knowledge, and two, to be able to hopefully at some point save some commission on those purchases if I stayed within California and invested.
Wow, that's amazing. This has absolutely nothing to do with anything, but I'll just let you know. I lived in Redlands. Yeah, I lived in there as a kid. when it was all orange groves. I mean, it was just literally all orange groves. We lived in a cul-de-sac, and at the end of the cul-de-sac, there was like a chain link fence, and behind it, there were just acres and acres of orange groves. So this has absolutely nothing to do with what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
no.
But nonetheless, I've seen, Redlands kind of boom a little bit. We were only there for a year, and
Okay.
it was a fun place to grow up, I'll tell you. But
Yeah.
anyway, it has nothing to do with anything. But
Yeah, you're right. I mean, speaking of real estate, yeah, it's Redlands has been one place that really has been a boom, if you will, because there's a lot of, like you said, there used to be a lot of orange groves, and now it's not orange groves anymore. It's mostly commercial, industrial tilt ups, and now they're building like a different downtown, so they're doing a lot of different work down there.
yeah, it's one of those little niches in Southern Cal, and there's not a lot of them, but there where I think there are some opportunities. We probably shouldn't be sharing that with the world now. Of course, everybody's going to be coming in, moving in on your territory, but
No, no.
I think that was a good choice.
I can't buy them all, but I can help people buy them all.
I like that. You got either or. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. I'm real curious. You as you started investing and buying, you're basically a buy and hold guy, right? So you weren't really flipping
Yeah.
or anything at that time. But you found this niche in your bio. We talked about ADUs, and I thought maybe you could just kind of tell us first off what is an ADU, and how did you find that niche to be a valuable way to invest in Southern Cal?
Yeah. So ADUs, accessory dwelling units. If you ever heard the word casita, granny flat, mother-in-law's quarters, that's here in California. Basically, in 2017, January of 2017, the governor here enacted some laws to build those because we're so impacted by nowhere to go and nowhere to build, and they can't really build 3, 4, 5-story houses. However, on lots you can build more. So they really wanted to provide more housing, and because it's so tough to find a rental to buy, even you know take out the lack of inventory that we have right now, and in just the United States, California alone just has a lot of issues trying to get more space because everybody wants to, we've expanded into the deserts, the Inland Empire, towards the border of Nevada and Arizona. However, still people end up being very close to infrastructure and LA and Orange County and stuff like that. So going back to 2017, the governor enacted some legislation where they basically provide the homeowner, and at the time it was a primary home, you could build a second unit, which would be, that mother-in-law's quarters, which now is ADU, accessory dwelling unit. And they provided that just for primary residents. They had a lot of different red tape in there where if you took away parking, you had to add parking. You could only do it a certain size compared to what the actual single family residence is on that lot. The lot coverage has to be a certain amount. So in 2020, they took that away, and it really made a lot easier for people. I mean, there was still a lot of people doing it anyways in 2017 out in LA County, up in the Bay Area. However, in January 2020, they took away, you can basically do it on any type of investment property. Could be 3,000 square foot lot, 10,000 square foot lot. You really are the one that can dictate that. And it used to take a long time for cities to approve this because a lot of cities were able to put in different regulations. So you had the state, and then all of a sudden the cities came in and said, yeah, we see what you guys did in 2017. So let's change this a little bit and make it so it's even harder for people to provide that ADU on their lot. Well, in 2020, the state came back in and said, no, you have to basically you could tweak some things, but you can't tweak it all. And you have to do exactly really what we're saying here. And they can build. So you as the homeowner or the investment property owner can build an ADU on any lot as an investment. And it could be, there's other particulars about it, but it provides the ability to get more cash flow and appreciate the property quicker. So there's been a lot more people are taking advantage of that. And it even applies to multifamily here. They used to say HOAs, you guys can really say, no ADUs, but now back in 2020, when they changed that, now HOAs really don't have a say either.
Wow. Well, you addressed, I guess, one of the biggest issues that I had regarding investing in California was, it's a great place for appreciation plays, but for cash flow, it's pretty slim. So, with ADUs, I mean, you can probably double the cash flow that would come out of a property. If you were just to rent out that one, let's say 3-bedroom home or what have you, you could increase that quite a bit and make that whole property actually cash flow very positive, it seems like.
Yeah, it's very beneficial for the investor that maybe is looking at single family residence, hoping that they can get $200 extra a month. Also a big thing, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but and this is going to go on top of being able to build those ADUs, is house hacking. So if anybody here hasn't heard of the term house hacking, BiggerPockets coined it. However, really what it is buying a house, and maybe it's a 4-bedroom house, you living in one of the rooms and then renting out all the rest, or you buying that house and then renting out all the rooms and cash flowing. And that's how a lot of people have been able to provide, cash flow for their houses here in California, because it's the expense versus how much ultimately you're going to buy it for really doesn't equate. But the ADU gives you another opportunity to either house hack, live in the front, or live in the ADU and cash flow more than what your mortgage is. Or you could ultimately buy that single family residence, build the ADU, and then cash flow even more on top of that because you're renting out both of them. And that's what it provides is, let's take out appreciation for a second. You would be able to buy something, for instance, we have one, we bought it, and the front runs out for $2,500, the back $1,750. And after all expenses and stuff like that, it's about $950 to $1,000 a month on cash flow. And that's, granted, it's more money than you would if you went into Ohio or Indianapolis or something like that. However, you're still able to get a huge ROI on your money. And especially for me, I don't really want to look out of state right now or in the near future. So this provides another aspect and another value add that really is beneficial to those investors that really want to stay local and they know a specific area like a city in Orange County like Mission Viejo or something like that, and they can provide, that solid cash flow.
Now, when you're looking at these homes, I'd imagine, you could, I don't know if it would qualify as a building sort of ground up on that property, but it could get really expensive, I would imagine, in terms of converting part of that building, or maybe above a garage, or even converting a garage to a rentable property. Do you look at it with that in mind, in terms of, that it's going to make sense, only if I can keep my costs below a certain amount, to get this thing, cash flow? Because I imagine you could put all kinds of money into it to build a little mini apartment there. But are you looking for something that is, really a lighter rehab, or maybe less construction involved?
Well, the biggest thing for me is to look at something that's a detached garage. And so going back to the ADU laws, you can convert a garage. Doesn't matter if it's attached or detached. you can also build from ground up, or you can build attached to that garage. So if it's a detached garage, you can add an extra 600 or 700 square feet and make that another unit that's attached to the garage. You could convert that garage completely, or you can build ground up. It is going to be more expensive, so just be cautious about how much you have, either in reserves or money up front. And if you don't have those two, then I would definitely look into a personal line of credit, or maybe getting a construction loan for the costs, because they could be anywhere in the ballpark. And granted, you really have to get with a contractor and someone that knows about ADUs, because I've ran into a lot of contractors that have never done it before. So you really want to make sure that the contractors, for one, know what they're talking about, how much they're going to charge you. It could be anywhere in the ballpark of $150,000 to $200,000 to do something ground up. And it's going to be cheaper if you do it if it's a detached garage and you're just converting the garage to maybe a 1-bed, 1-bath, because you already have the structure in place. You may not have the sewer obviously added there and stuff like that, but you do have the luxury of having a structure already built there. However, also go back to the numbers and run those numbers to see if those would align with a good cash flow. Because you could say, Bill, you could say, hey, this property at 123 Main Street looks like a great property to buy. And then all of a sudden, you just want to convert the garage because you want to keep the cost low, but you're only, cash flowing, let's say $1,100. And then after all your expenses and stuff like that, it's only like $300 or $400. That's going to outweigh the construction costs of maybe $150,000 to do it, or even $100,000 to do it. So it's a lot more expensive. So keep that in mind when you're looking around for properties to build these ADUs. And they also have there's some companies since 2017 that do some prefabbed ADUs as well.
Really? Just ground up type prefab?
Yeah, you go there, and I forget the pricing of them, because I've never really looked in my market and also my niche. I would rather build them from ground up if we're going to go that route. However, yeah, I forget, there's some that are based up in the Bay, but yeah, prefab. Just you go there, you say, hey, I want a 20 by 30 ADU in my back. In the back of my backyard, and then they'll just build it up and then they'll drop it there. But it's not like you're going to be saving a lot of costs and expense doing it that way. So really run the numbers on both. But yeah, there's a couple of different companies that are doing prefabbed ADUs as well. Interesting.
Well, this is an area I'm sure you're still learning every day as you acquire more of these properties. What was sort of one of the early things that you discovered, or maybe it was a mistake that you've learned from in this process that you've learned from, and you're going forward and trying to be more effective in converting these places?
So a couple of things. Make sure when you go into it, you're going to need a structural engineer, an architect, and a contractor. And they're not all going to be, give you a one package thing. They're going to ultimately give you their prices on each. However, the architect's going to need to get paid, and the structural engineer, and you can't go without those two. And then also remember that you're also going to have to submit it to the city wherever you live or wherever you buy that property at. And the city is going to cost some fees to get that process through. And it's also going to take you some time. It's not going to be you submit the permits and then 2 weeks to a month later, you're going to get them. They used to take, kind of going back to my comment before, it used to take more than 120 days to get approved. And now back in January 2020, they said it was basically mandatory that the city needed to approve at least prelim approval within 60 days, which is a lot better, obviously. So just know that going into it. Make sure you have the reserves, because I've dealt my mistakes is thinking that maybe those structural engineers and the architects are more on top of it than they were cracked up to be when you first met them and had a conversation and hired them. And you're still paying, you're still paying $7,000 to $10,000 to $12,000 for those structural engineers, the architect, and everybody else to get that stuff done into the city. So just know that that's going to be an added expense, and the length. And make sure you do your due diligence on finding those people. That's one mistake that I had. The structural engineer and the architect took a lot longer than they should have been taking. And then I would say, I just want to touch on real quick, I would definitely say, going back a few years ago, outside of ADUs, just kind of a mistake that I did personally is being listening to other people's advice, or either the economy saying, hey, this, I wouldn't buy real estate right now because the market's going to crash and stuff like that. I think that you can find deals, good and bad, in every market. You just got to make sure you're doing your due diligence and you're providing that information and data prior to buying that property, because I sat on the sidelines for a little while waiting for a potential market crash when it never happened. Not saying that there's not one coming up or anything like that, or anything, but that's another mistake that I did early on.
Good point. Yeah, I think a lot of folks miss out on a lot of opportunity just sort of sitting on the sidelines, as many of us are, looking at where these great deals that are going to come up here. So what would you say was something that you did that worked out really well, one of your bigger successes?
I would say, honestly, I'll go back to the first property that I ended up buying, and that was luck, because I didn't run the numbers. I wasn't really, I didn't know about what the ROI is, cash on cash return, those things. Make sure you know those going into buying your first property up to your 90th property, or your 900th property, because if not, then obviously you're putting yourself out there, and you ultimately could lose on that property and maybe walk away from investing completely. So, we ultimately were able to buy something in a good time and not run those numbers, and came out with, looking really good, and having good cash flow, and, actually having like a really good ROI. And we pretty much bird that property, which was we fixed it up, we rented it out, we refied it, and then we really kept that model going, because what we did was we were able to have another one. That one had 2 units on it, and we were able to fix those other units up, and then it appraised for a lot more than what we bought it for, and took some money out. But that was a big success for us. So that out of all, but it did teach me to make sure that ultimately you need to run your numbers. You need to be able to know the market, know the data, know what you're buying.
Right. Good point. Well, a lot of our audience are folks that are 50 years of age and older. Some are approaching retirement. Some are already in retirement. And, they're looking at ways that they can invest in real estate to either supplement their current income as a retiree, or maybe they just have a nest egg and they want to utilize some kind of a good investment to maintain that, or to grow that in terms of returns. What would you recommend to that audience, as maybe even related to what you're doing now? I know every state doesn't necessarily have these ADUs, but maybe you could address that from a specific standpoint, but also what other types of real estate investing would you recommend for folks in that position?
Yeah, well, for one, first off, I would definitely say, don't think that you're out of the game, thinking that, you're 54 and you can't invest in real estate or anything like that, because there's still time to do it, and you can still get deals. And honestly, there's very successful people that do it, later in life, and really ultimately are very fulfilled doing it later in life. And that's not just real estate. That's that's business in general. You have the opportunities, especially with the internet. You have the ability to be very, very successful, either a little bit later in life or middle age. So for one, don't get discouraged, and two, for the ADU process, if you have some areas that you could build a second unit, I would definitely look in areas that have. For me, it's big. If you want to save some money up front, I would look at detached garages. Those are huge because you ultimately can have less construction costs, not half, not 50% of construction costs, but significantly less construction costs than you would if you're building ground up. So look at that. I would look at bigger lots, and there's still, even though California has smaller lots, there's still bigger lots there. So you can basically separate that, the ADU from the main house, and ultimately is going to provide a lot more value for those people that live there, and you're going to get more rent too. And then if you still have those bigger lots as well, you're able to, because right now the legislature in California, it doesn't demand you to, if you convert a garage, add another garage or add parking. I would definitely see if you have somewhere, like we have a property that's about almost 10,000 square feet, and we're going to ultimately convert that garage and put in some extra parking because we have the luxury of doing it. So look at those garage conversions because it's going to save you money. And then also on top of the garage conversions, maybe a bigger lot so you can actually provide some parking, because that's what that's going to do. You don't have to, but what that's going to do is increase that monthly income for you and your investors. I would say, just as a general or a broader point of view on investing, I would look into self-directed IRAs. Those are huge. Even if you had a 401k and you're 59 and a half, and you want to get into investing, you can easily move that over into a self-directed IRA. I'm not a custodian of that. However, I know a lot about those because I've read a few books about them. Those are big value adds, especially for someone later that would like to get in investing, because you can invest in that solo 401k and buy multiple properties. There's a lot of other ins and outs of it, and just make sure that you're working with someone that is qualified to give you that information. However, those are big ones too, because I know if you've invested in a 401k for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you have the opportunity to buy more properties within that investment that you've built over those years. And those solo 401ks are massive.
Yeah, that's
and self-directed. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a real smart way to go, and yeah, you don't really have to take money out of your self-directed IRA until you're 70 and a half now or something, or and so you can still invest in there tax-free, and keep, as long as you keep the income in there, and it can be a real good vehicle for you. That's great. Well, you've got three big things going on here. You're a firefighter. It sounds like you love the work you're doing there. You also have, you're a realtor, and you're very busy there. And then you're an investor. What's sort of your long-term plan here, looking ahead at your business, as well as, what you're doing occupationally as well?
Yeah, long-term plan for me would be still grow the ADUs. We're looking at buying or acquiring 5 more properties to perform the ADUs this year, and then continue doing that. In 2023, our goal is to basically reevaluate the portfolio and change a little bit into multifamily and get that economy of scale. Once we get to a position that we're able to do that, sell off a couple that are maybe not performing as good as they should have been, and reinvest that money as a 1031 exchange. So hopefully that stays around, and move that money into multifamily. The real estate, as a real estate agent, still grow that team. And the plan is to, I have one full-time assistant right now and also a buyer's agent and myself. So if there's days at the fire station that get pretty busy and hectic and I can't get back to those clients, they're able to provide that service and that really high quality service that those clients need, and build that team into 5 members and continue to grow our marketing and advertising as well for this year on to next year.
That's great. That's great. Wow. You got a lot going on here. Really busy. And your wife helps you as well, right? You guys kind of do a lot of stuff together on this.
Yeah, so she doesn't do or is at all involved with my real estate sales. She does stuff with our investments, actually helps with the design of construction and rehabs and stuff like that, working with the contractors, making sure that, we're getting the right countertops in. That's her forte, which is nice. I'm not a huge design buff, so it definitely helps out because I don't have an eye for that. And I know a lot of people do, and it's really great and it's really beneficial that she's amazing at it. So that helps out.
Yeah, that would be a big help, especially dealing with contractors and so forth. That can get pretty involved, and just checks and balances and all that kind of stuff related to that too. Well, that's great. You mentioned too, you're pretty much focused on investing in California, at least for the next couple of years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my plan. I know, just for me at least, and I know everybody kind of does what they're comfortable with, and I know that there's a lot of people that do really, really well and are very, very successful outside of California right now. Buying those ADU or buying the properties and putting those ADUs on it are what we're focused on. And I think that that's going to be a good solid value add for the next, we're in 2021, for the next 3 to 4 years. And then later down the road, once we start adjusting our portfolio and start buying those multifamilies, we'll look out of state for some other properties that are cash flowing exteriorly from California. Just right now, I know a lot of people that are outside of California, and even some people that are in California that invest out of state, they're hesitant just because our laws are, very tight comparatively to, let's say, a Texas or Nevada or Arizona. However, if the thing is if you're doing your due diligence up front, just like you are on the properties, if you're doing your due diligence up front on the tenants and making sure that you're providing or they're providing all the information to you before you actually lease to them, and everything checks out, then you should be good to go and run it like a business. Those things are crucial to being able to be successful in California as a real estate investor. I think where people go wrong is, and I think this is all across the board, doesn't matter if it's in California, is they ultimately, they go into it thinking that it's more of a hobby or actually practicing as a hobby and not get real serious about it. And that's where they have those issues and those challenges with those ultimate tenants.
Yeah, and I remember, talking with you earlier, you had mentioned that part of this is, looking at, these homes are expensive in California, and to constantly be able to generate the funds to purchase these homes, you either have to have, equity going up phenomenally that you can do sort of cash out refis or what have you on them, or you need to have a source for that to happen, maybe private money or what have you. But the way you've linked things together it's pretty interesting in that you have your your core W-2 job as a fireman, and I'm sure that covers sort of your regular expenses in your life and what have you. But selling 20, 25 homes a year, well, the commissions from those isn't that what fuels sort of your ADU purchases and rehabs?
Yeah, and fortunately, sometimes there'll be days that I'll work extra at the fire department. That's fewer than it was 4, 5, 6 years ago when I wasn't running a big team. However, that's ultimately what helps out, is being able to, and that's really why I got into it outside of, being able to have more access to properties and everything else, is, there's going to be, helping out those clients. And then ultimately there's going to be a commission involved where I can, save the taxes and pay that, and anything above and beyond what the living expenses are, which our living expenses, we've been able to really cut down a lot of them because we got on a tight budget. We knew what we wanted to do. And I think that's something that if someone hasn't got into real estate investing yet, that's something that you should do, is make sure, your budget's real tight, because anything above and beyond what your living expenses are, you can take that money, save it up, and then invest in real estate. So anything above and beyond what the living expenses my wife and I have, we're able to invest that money and move that money into more properties, so that those commissions do really help because we don't look to private money. Outside of buying, properties conventional and stuff like that, the construction costs and everything else that come with those ADU builds ultimately just comes out of our pocket, and then we can refinance it after we finish it 6-7 months later.
And I'm sure it doesn't hurt to have access to the MLS on a regular basis too, especially since you're buying in California. You can find those deals early on, I'm sure, and also search for the characteristics that you're looking for specifically in a home that would work well as an ADU. So I imagine that you're hanging out there on a regular basis too.
Yeah. I use the MLS quite a bit, and even having those other websites to be able to, a lot of people access Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, and they get a lot of information off there. I feel like just with all the information that comes from the MLS, there's so much more information on comparables and data for those properties, which truly help when you're analyzing deals, which if you're someone that invests in single family residence and you don't have access to the MLS, hit up your local real estate agent that you've known, met, or have built a relationship with, and see if they can give you access through their portal, because I believe that is, above and beyond what you'll get on a Zillow or a Redfin.
Yeah, good point. Well, our time has kind of zipped by here pretty quickly. Some great stuff here, Peter. I really think that this is stuff that people can grab onto, even if they're not in an area where their state maybe where they're doing ADUs. I think some of the dynamics and just the systems involved in what you're doing could apply to all types of real estate. We had a gentleman on that was doing student housing up in Sacramento or Stockton area, and he was buying 3-bedroom homes and putting in room dividers to increase the number of people that he could house in it, and making it a 4-bedroom, kind of cutting into the living room or what have you, and then trying to, stack up students in the rooms, to maximize his cash flow. So, a lot of those same things might apply, with an ADU, I would think.
Yeah, for sure. You got to get, going back to finding deals and stuff like that, low inventory in the United States as a whole, you got to get creative, and you got to be able to, get in those niches and stick with that niche for the time that it's good. And then it may stay good forever, or it may change in 3 to 8 years. And once it changes, move on to the next and find another niche and ride that niche until it really evaporates and continue moving. So I think that those are, just like you had mentioned, student housing and dividing rooms to make more income. I think with real estate, the way it's going, and then also the internet, so many people are getting more and more savvy. So it's harder to find deals, but at the same time, once you find those niches and deals, stick with it and stay with it.
That's good advice. Well, we are at that portion. We have what we call our wrap it up session, where I ask you a series of quick questions about resources that you've used that have been valuable for you, so our listening audience might be able to tap into some of those too. So if you are you ready to wrap it up?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
All right. Favorite real estate book?
Oh, real estate book. You know what? I got one here. It's How to Buy and Manage Rental Properties. Irene and Mike Millen. Have you heard of that one?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, that one's really good. I think I read this 4 or 5 years ago. That one's really good. That's one to definitely pick up and read through, and I highlighted it a lot just because it gives a lot of context to what you're looking for in rental properties and all that stuff, and really how to be, going back to what I talked about, being a really solid business person when it comes to rentals.
That's great. Great. I will check that out. How about favorite just general business book?
I'm going to kind of throw a curveball here. So, The Alchemist, have you heard about it?
Yeah, sure have.
It's not really a business book. However, the reason I bring it up is it's more of a mindset / business book, because it really gives the reader and also the person after they read it a mindset shift to, just like Think and Grow Rich. It really gives you a mindset shift to accomplish your goals and focus on things that really initially you think that potentially couldn't be met or, excelled at. So I think that that's a really good book to pick up and read through. It's like 160 pages. It's really good.
Great. Well, how about a website that you use that really helps you in what you're doing day to day, of course, other than your own?
I would go to Bigger Pockets. Bigger Pockets is a good resource. They have, free resources throughout it. They have calculators to show you how to run numbers on rental properties and other properties. I think Bigger Pockets is huge.
Do you have a favorite app?
Yeah. So have you heard of Property Radar?
Yes, I have. Yeah,
Okay.
It used to be just all foreclosure stuff, but now they've expanded quite a bit, I understand.
Yeah, so it used to be Foreclosure Radar, and then they went to Property Radar, and it used to be 5 states, and now they're nationwide. However, Property Radar is huge. I use the app all the time because you can just jump on there. You get really all the tax information of the property, so it's huge. You can get that right away.
God, that's great. How about a favorite quote?
Yeah, I prepped for this one because, but I got, don't let your past steal your present. And I believe that is very true, because you don't want to think about, what your dilemmas were in the past or what really held you back in the past. Just think about your present and apply what you've had in the past to your current situation, the goods, and continue moving on. And some of the mistakes, because those mistakes are what we learn from. So I think that's a huge quote and benefit.
Good one. And this one here, I don't know if it doesn't sound like you would have experienced this before, but what if you lost absolutely everything, all your assets, okay? And you are just like starting from scratch now, but knowing what you already know, and you have $1,000 in cash. What would you do with that $1,000 to sort of relaunch your real estate business?
So I would split it up. I would say I'll take 500 and 500. 500 for marketing, and then 500 to basically do the deal. So I would take 500, do mailers, use it for gas if I had a vehicle. Sounds like I don't. Ultimately, use some of that money to try to get a deal or have at least a small amount of skin in the game. I think those two would be huge for people listening. Door knocking and doing some marketing, mailers to, a couple of different ultimate properties that you've walked around and door knocked, being able to mail those people as well. So get in front of them as much as possible, and then use the next 500 to actually do the deal and buy the deal. That's
awesome. That's great. Wow. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of folks here that are listening that would love to find out more, about you, or maybe even want to get in contact with you. Is there a way for folks to do that?
Yeah, of course. I run a podcast, actually. It's Real Estate Trends and Market Updates. Actually, Bill was on it as well.
That's right. That's where we first met.
Yeah. And then also Instagram, Peter McKernan with an extra N on the end. My last name, McKernan for that handle. And you can shoot me an email too at McKernan, McKernan.Peter@gmail.com.
Great. Well, Peter, this has been fantastic. Good stuff and a lot of new stuff for me. I'll tell you, just learning here as a Californian, you'd think I'd know about ADUs or at least know something more about them. But no, you really educated me. It was good stuff. But we have this tradition here as we close out our show. Even though you're not an old dog, you're, really a young pup yet, but we have this thing, we have our closing howl, so that you can just give us your best old hound dog howl to close out the show. Are you ready for that, Peter?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, go for it.
Ow!
All right. That'll work, man.
That'll work. All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, Bill. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity and the time for coming on here and talking with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. And I also want to thank all our old dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you joined us really means a lot, and we really appreciate it. Now, please note everything that Peter talked about today will be presented in detail in our detailed show notes located at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog, and you're going to look for the episode with Peter McKernan. Well, that is the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.